Thank you for watching the Housing Oregon YouTube channel. Be sure to join our network and get involved in the work that we are doing. If you can, please like and subscribe. It helps us build this channel, which serves as a platform to communicate with our members. This video is part of our 2025 annual conference. We're looking for folks to be on the conference planning committee. Please email info@housingoregon.org.
Today, my name is Alma, and I'm going to be moderating this panel. I'm currently serve as the secretary for NAREB, Oregon Realtors. And with me, I'm going to introduce our panelists. I'm going to start by introducing, from the furthest right, Waylon Carter, who is our incoming president for NAREB, Oregon Realtors. And Quallen will share perspectives on how the reparative justice approach can be adapted to Oregon's housing landscape, leveraging this leadership role and expertise in advancing Black homeownership initiatives. Next, I have Dr. Lyle Cruz. He is the current president of the NAREB Washington chapter. Lyle will provide insights from the Washington chapter directly involvement in shaping and supporting the initiative innovative reparative justice measure, sharing lessons learned and strategies for sustainable implementation. Sabrina Smith is here, and she is currently our Umpqua, now Columbia Bank representative, and she also serves as the secretary, right? The board for the board of Oregon Realtors. I'm sorry, no, Washington Realtors, NAREB. And lastly, but not least, I'm going to introduce Nicole Bascom, and she's a key leader in the Black Home Initiative. Nicole has played a central role in the Black Home Initiative, a collaborative effort aimed at increasing Black homeownership in Washington. She brings this deep expertise in lending, community engagement, and the implementation of reparative justice measures. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you. Can you all hear me with the Mattel mic? Okay. Okay. I unmuted it, but I'll use that one. Okay, let's do that. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Alma, for the introduction. Thank you all for having me here, coming down to talk with you about one of my favorite subjects and how we can help Oregon, do some of the things we did in Washington. As Alma mentioned, my name is Nicole Bascom. I am the owner of real estate brokerage, so I'm the owner and designated broker of my family real estate brokerage that my father started in 1981. So I took over operations when he passed away in 2017. I'm also the Region 14 Vice President for NAREB. For the Washington State Housing Finance Commission, I am the board chair, so I'll be sharing CHAP with you from that perspective because we do manage the CHAP program in Washington, the WishFIC does. And I'm also a core team member on the Black Home Initiative. So this is going to give you a framework of how we got to CHAP, the Covenant Homeownership Account program. Many of you, I know that what we're here to talk about, but it's important that I share the framework for you of how we got there because we didn't just get to that legislation. It was a lot of work that we did for a few years to get to that place. So I'm going to kind of blow through these slides so you can get a sense of the Black Home Initiative and then how CHAP was born out of the BHI. So how did we get here? We had a convening to explore a concept, the Washington Roundtable and Washington Bankers Association in March 2021. I presented at this event, and we really talked about what we were experiencing in Western Washington, because in Washington, 85% of the Black community is in Western Washington between the three counties, Snohomish, King, and Pierce, but primarily in King and Pierce. So we were really talking about how we had been seeing a lot of our disinvestment in the communities, gentrification really decimated the community, and that's what was in March 2021. We launched a summit. We developed a 7-point plan to increase Black homeownership. We then, in July, the Center for Community Investment, which is It's a national kind of foundation. They picked Civic Commons to convene the Greater Seattle effort, and BHI was part of that effort. The core team of 7 community leaders were inaugural meeting. I'm part of that core team. 7-point plan was released in October. We went to our governor, and then our formal announcement of the BHI was in March of 2022. BHI core and full teams hold first strategy session, April 22. We convened the Homeownership Act signed into law. So this is just kind of, again, a framework. I'll go deeper into it. We received the Racial Equity Initiative Friends of Housing Award from WishFIC. First grant awarded by our Black Homeownership Legacy Fund, which we stood up through BHI. Field Order 15, so what Field Order 15 is, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Field Order 15. So General Tecumseh Sherman put Field Order 15 in place after the Civil War. So from Florida to South Carolina, 400,000 acres of land were supposed to be given to the previously enslaved. They were supposed to get their 40 acres and a mule. So Field Order 15 was what that was. We know that when Jackson became president, he immediately rescinded that order, and the enslaved, formerly enslaved, never got the land. So this is in honor of that promise that was never kept to those who were formerly enslaved. And we felt that was really apropos for the work we were doing, because the Field Order 15 fund provides funding for developers, emerging developers of color. So that's what the Field Order 15 fund is, and it sits under the BHI banner, like CHAP does. And then we have the Covenant Homeownership Account and Program launch in July of 2024. And then here's some other things. We have a buyer readiness fund where we get buyers ready to buy, we pay off debt. We have the Black Homeowners Ambassador Program. We have ambassadors that go into communities for those who are current homeowners, because we also have some displacement happening. And we won a social impact award last December. We launched One Drop, which is for those developers of color and for women to support them, because what we know is small developers rarely have opportunity to put deals together because they're too small. So those are the part of things that were happening. Our first summit was in February. We had over 200 plus people where we really re-engaged and affirmed our commitment. We know that things are changing in this country, and we are standing firm that we are not changing our name. It will stay Black Home Initiative. We're very clear about the work that we're doing. We will not change course. And so that was what we did in February. And then we rolled out our land acquisition fund as a part of Field Order 15. So homeownership rates in Seattle and Tacoma. As I said, I'm gonna go pretty quickly so we can kind of get to the meat of it and talk with the panel. So as you can see, from 1960, and then the Fair Housing Act signing in 1968, homeownership has consistently gone down. After the Fair Housing Act was signed, where we were supposed to be not discriminating legally, we still see the descent of homeownership. Who owns the homes in Tacoma and Seattle, our two main cities, as you can see. 32% of households are Black in Tacoma, 22% in Seattle, as opposed to the counterparts. Zero net worth. 42% of Black Washingtonians have zero net worth in the state of Washington, as opposed to 14% of white households. So what is the Black Home Initiative? It's part of the Connecting Capital and Community, a national project of the Center for Community Investment that targets racial inequities at the core of the housing ecosystem. With initial seed funding from JP Morgan Chase, that was a really big piece that I wanted to share with you. This multi-sector effort will apply CCI's capital absorption framework in 5 U.S. cities, including the greater Seattle area. It was Seattle, Chicago, Miami, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., and New Orleans, but they had dropped out towards the end. So we were all a part of this framework to help bring different initiatives to our cities. But we were the only one who focused on a multi-sector systems-wide change. Many of them were just doing projects. Ours is a system-wide change. We're trying to affect the entire system in Washington. So Civic Commons is the convener of the Black Home Initiative. And this is the core team, myself and my colleagues. So we are pretty much where we bring all the ideas and have the conversation and kind of make final decisions is what the core team does. Our shared priority and our line of sight, the opportunity to own a home and the potential benefits of that asset. Number of new Black homeowners. So we have a North Star. We want to have 1,500 net new Black homeowners by 2028 and 3,000 by 2032. So that's our goal. And then our ultimate desire, the reduction of racial inequity and an increase in intergenerational Black household wealth. This is kind of our nexus, our calendar, starting from progress is being made towards these outcomes. So all these green checks they've happened, we've gotten it done, and those are under construction. And again, that's our line of sight, 2033. So that's our line of sight, is those net new 3,000 by 2033. So this is called an issue tree, and this is what's really important. This is where our work lives. We have a supply, demand, and enabling environment. That's how BHI is structured. So we have, how can we significantly scale the number of black homeowners in order to achieve our shared priority, which is those net new homeowners? Well, this is how you do it. Increase supply. So increase buildable land inventory, increase funding, diversity production. So that's the supply part of the issue tree. This is the demand part of the issue tree. Increase number of new mortgage-ready black households and sustain existing. Improve outreach and support, improve lending practices and products. So that's the demand side. Then there's the enabling environment. We have to provide an environment where these things are going to be able to come to fruition. So increase community engagement and align action. So we have increased black-led developers and CBOs, align philanthropy, align policy, increase and incentivize collaboration. So for the purpose of this conversation today, we're talking about our enabling environment, the policies that we put in place. So you might be thinking, this is nice, but what's different about this initiative compared to other past attempts? So when you're talking about an impact network, we accomplish this by a shared priority. We don't have leaders. We're like a murmuration. We are all working together interconnectedly. Different organizations have different pieces of the work, but we're more like that, where we're working as a network. There's no one who's in charge, no one leader or organization. We are an ecosystem, not an ecosystem. So we don't talk about the companies that are at the table, who did what. Everyone who's at the table is very clear about the purpose of why they're there, and that's why they're there, which is the first time I've ever seen that. I'm a lifelong banker, and no one never talks about themselves in banking. But the network, it is very different. But we do have a network weaver. His name is Marty Koistra. Some of you may or may not know him. He's been in the house, and he was in the habitat environment for like 30 years. He's retired and started to do this work. He is our network weaver. So he weaves that murmuration and keeps our work going. So this is how we put in place steps to success: outreach and education, pre-purchase counseling, affordable products, post-purchase support, safety net, foreclosure prevention. So this is, again, a systems-wide approach. So we are capturing interested households, either they're long-term ready, mid-term ready, or near ready. So really the question is, can you buy today or in 5 years? Either way, we're going to be here to support you. So expanding black homeownership in Seattle, we have a lot of analytics and data is very important for the work that we're doing. We work with iEmergent to provide those analytics. So the goal is the 1,500 new first-time foundational black homeowners in BHI target area by December 2028. So we made a further distinction. You know, in America, the black label kind of encompasses a lot of different individuals in the diaspora, that we call it. Well, the foundational black experience, so those of us who are the descendants of the enslaved, is very different than our immigrant brothers and sisters. They have a more immigrant experience. We as foundational black people have a much different experience with the systemic racism we've been experiencing for the past 400 years. So it's important for us using data to support why we are supporting foundational blacks and know that this is a targeted universalism. If you fix it for the least of these, it'll be fixed for everyone. We know that to be true. We saw that with the civil rights movement. We've seen it with different movements in this country. When you fix it for those who it's worse for, everyone benefits. So we know housing, particularly in Washington, and it is across the country, the numbers are not much different across the country. The foundational black community has the worst outcomes. And so we want to fix the system for them, and then it'll be fixed for everyone. So as a part of this work with BHR, we serve foundational black homebuyers who were born in the United States, first-time homebuyers, have an annual household income at or below 120% AMI, purchase a home in the Puget Sound region, so Western Washington, and receive support from a network partner from one or more of the following things. So pre-purchase counseling, DPA, debt remediation, realtor services, loan underwriting, and servicing. So these are our target areas. As I said, we're very hyper-focused in the areas where the black community typically resides. So that's South Seattle. It was the Central District of Seattle, but that was the community that was gentrified completely out. When I grew up in the Central District, we were roughly 87% of the population in that neighborhood. We're now maybe 7 or 8. And that's over like a 25-year term. And it was a very
One, two.
okay.
This is
Yes.
not working.
So it's not working. All right, the lap wasn't. This one, can you hear me now? Oh, this one still? Okay. Let me keep going. Okay, so since the Central District got regentrified, we saw a lot of the community pushed into South King County and the North Pierce. So now these are our target areas. So we see South Seattle, South King County, and the North Pierce area, which includes Tacoma, University Place, Lakewood. Okay, today the BHI network is made up of 120 partner organizations who have signed up to be an advocate for this work. Partners comprise a strong mix of public, private, and nonprofit organizations. So everyone is at the table because everyone is encompassing of this system we're trying to change. So how can we together meet the moment? By changing systems that are long overdue to be changed, and by providing ample resources to overcome existing disparities, and by aligning our resources and actions toward this shared priority. Okay, so what we're here to talk about, Covenant Homeownership Act. So, changing policies and systems. Part of these outcomes were, during the work at BHI, we decided that, and through some data collection, that we wanted to provide an opportunity for those who were in the Black community to get back to homeownership, because the King County did a report, and since gentrification started, Black community in Washington, in King County, lost $8 billion in wealth, with a B. $8 billion by being gentrified out of the Central District. So how do we try to do that? Covenant Homeownership Account is what we passed in Washington State. So this was a collective effort in the BHI network. There was no one person, no one organization. The network came together and put this policy framework on the table. In the network, we all work in work groups. So there's the policy work group, there's the lender work group, developer work group, faith-based initiatives, lending and underwriting. So those of us who are part of the policy outreach group, we got together and put this framework together in collaboration with Representative Jamila Taylor, she's here, and previous Speaker of the House, Frank Chop, who actually recently passed this year. So, but he did get to see the law passed, which was really great. So they were our champions in the legislature, and you see our then governor, Jay Inslee, signing the bill. So this was a collaborative effort within the network, and this is very much a reflection in that picture of what our network looks like. Everyone was at the table. We all were a part of writing the legislation. I actually, I testified in Olympia regarding how I was affected by these racial covenants. So what it is there were racist covenants on our titles, 55,000 of them in the state of Washington, that kept folks out of communities, kept Black folks and Native folks and Asians and Jews out of the community. So what we did was did a study to say who's still being affected by these racist covenants. So we came up with 7 ethnicities through a really large study that are still being affected, and that's how covenant came to be. So rates by race and ethnicity in Washington. The highest rate is white community. The Asian community has the second largest, and so on and so forth, all the way down. These are our closings so far. So CHAP launched July 1st, 2024. We've already had 700 people get to homeownership. 700 people in a year that would not have been homeowners had it not for been this program that we passed. So this is an exceptional program. It works. It is changing people's lives. And we actually recently, this year in our legislature, added some pieces. So the initial CHAP, you had to be 100% AMI, and you have to be one of 7 ethnicities: Black, Hispanic, Latino, Native American, Korean Asian, Indian Asian, or Native Alaskan, Native Hawaiian. So those are the 7 ethnicities that can use CHAP. And you have to have been a descendant of someone who was in Washington State, and that's either yourself, mother, father, grandparents, direct descendant, before April 11th, 1968. So those are the frameworks where you have to be able to participate in CHAP. So if you are not, or your parents or your grandparents not living in Washington as of April 11, 1968, you do not qualify. But the study shows that that is kind of the time frame where we're seeing these effects. And that's how we got those 7 ethnicities that are still experiencing it to this day. Because what we did know that the Jewish population is no longer experiencing homeownership issues. The Asian population, as you can see, is second behind the white population. So the study was very, very impactful to tell us who's still experiencing these challenges. So closings by BHI zone. So as you can see, I showed you our zone map before. These are the closings in our map. So we're being very strategic to focus on the areas where folks want to be, because a lot of people got pushed out, especially people in King County. Those of us like myself from Seattle got pushed out and couldn't even live in King County anymore, now in Pierce County. So we're trying to get folks back into the county if they like. We have people coming back home from Washington who left because they felt like they couldn't be homeowners, they didn't have experiences. I had a young lady call me the other day in Atlanta wanting to come home now because CHAP is available for her to be a homeowner. So that's really what we were working to see. So as you can see, we have our closings pending and overall in the different neighborhoods and the different loan amounts that we see. Our average price in King County is $985,000 in King County. And in Pierce County, it's $680, I believe. Again, how can we come together to meet the moment? And I will pass this on to Sabrina.
Good morning, everybody. I'm actually going to come on this side so that I can see better. Thank you, Nicole. So I'm Sabrina Smith, Vice President of Community Lending for the state of Washington and Idaho, and I work for Columbia Bank. There's some Columbia Bank folks over there. Oh, is that better? Thank you. And I am on the board secretary for NARAB Western Washington Realtors, and also a member of Black Home Initiative. So as Nicole was saying, I'm not going to go through everything, but this is the Covenant Homeownership Program study. Am I in your way, honey? No. So in spring 2023, the Washington State Legislature passed the Covenant Homeownership Act, Bill 1474, with bipartisan support. The Covenant Homeownership Act acknowledges the state's government role as both an active and passive participant in generations of discriminatory policies and practices that created barriers to credit and homeownership for historically marginalized communities in Washington, and that these discriminatory actions continue to impact these communities today. The Covenant Homeownership Act requires the State of Washington Housing Finance Commission to complete or commission a study to inform the development of a new special purpose credit program, also known as PCP, that will remedy racial disparities in homeownership and access to credit that left the state's long history of discrimination. This study fulfills the requirements of the Covenant Homeownership Act to document historical discrimination in housing and its impact on current homeownership opportunities in Washington, and to analyze the effectiveness of the current programs and policies, and to recommend an approach to remedy lingering inequities, which is what Nicole was talking about earlier. So Washington, and I'm sure other states, had a history of racism in housing. So in Washington, we made a commitment to make it right. Again, in 2023, thanks to the advocacy of leadership, the Housing Development Consortium, the Black Home Initiative, again, Representative Jamila Taylor, Senator John Levick, and Representative Frank Chop, the Washington State Legislature passed the Covenant Homeownership Act. The act created a new program and funding source to help people become homeowners who have been impacted by the state-sanctioned racial discrimination in housing. The term covenant refers to the racially restrictive clauses used in neighborhoods throughout the state of Washington in order to keep people shut out based on their race or religion. So I added this slide only because I wasn't sure if people have actually been able to see what racial restrictive covenants looks like on a deed. So this deed is actually an excerpt from the list restrictions in a homeowners association bylaws for Blue Ridge, which was one of several neighborhoods in northwest Seattle and Shoreline that was developed and restricted by airline industrialist William Boeing. So this was happening time after time after time. In the state of Washington, several cities in Seattle, it still lurks in some of those deeds. More than 37,000 homeowners in King County and at least 35,000 and more in other counties. So look deep in those deeds, especially if it was prior to 1968. What this restriction says, if you can't see it, no property in said addition shall at any time be sold, conveyed, rented, or leased in whole or in part to any person or persons not of the white or Caucasian race. No person other than one of the white or Caucasian race shall be permitted to occupy any property in said addition or portion thereof or building thereon, except a domestic servant actually employed by a person of the white or Caucasian race, where the latter has to be an occupant or works for the company or at the home. Racial restrictions became common in 1910 to 1960. For the most of that time, restrictions were an enforceable contract. And if the seller violated that contract, then they could have their properties taken. So many neighborhoods prohibited even renting to Asian Americans and Jews as well as blacks. In 1968, Congress passed the Fair Housing Act, finally declaring it unlawful to discriminate on the basis of race or ethnicity in the sale or renting homes. But although decades have passed since 1968, the shadow of the racist restrictions remains. And that has shaped the demography of some neighborhoods, unfortunately limiting access to homeownership and being able to build wealth. So, and this is how, as Nicole was explaining about the special purpose credit program. So Congress authorized SPCPs in 1976, in a 1976 amendment to the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, as a tool to counteract centuries of unfair laws and policies that deprive millions of consumers the right and opportunity to fair housing. So this is basically about the special purpose credit program. Again, you must be a Washington state resident or your parents or grandparents prior to 1968. Again, the eligible races are Black, Hispanic, Native American, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, other Pacific Islanders, Korean, and Asian. Must be a first-time home buyer, a single parent, an individual that was displaced, an individual who has only had a principal residence, not on a permanent foundation, and an individual where the home has been deemed uninhabitable. Again, down payment assistance, owner occupied, It is not a grant, it is a loan, it'll be a second mortgage, must be owner occupied, loan terms. It's due if you pay it off or refinance, maximum loan amount 20% down, not to exceed 150,000 plus closing costs. So if it's 150,000, let's say the closing cost is 12,000, then the loan would be 162,000. Again, the AMI is now 120%. There may be loan forgiveness as the 2025 legislator updates. You must be in the home for 5 years, the AMI, if you're under 80% AMI, and the mortgage payments in good standing. Closed loan results, Nicole has already mentioned. Program launched in July. We've closed 724 loans and in 22 counties, and about 73% of those were Black families. So what's the difference between this initiative, or what's special about this initiative? That 724 loans in less than a year. And this is my favorite part. So this is a quote from Nicole that we love to use almost on every slide. It is not incumbent on or possible for one group to carry this work. To combat the centuries of discrimination against the Black community, it will take a network of committed individuals to drive the work to achieve the outcomes we aspire to see. Nicole Bascom. Thank you. And we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Sabrina and Nicole. So as you can see, they gave us a really in-depth view of what this initiative is about. And, here in Oregon, the Oregon legislature produced a report addressing barriers to homeownership for people of color in 2019. And ultimately developing a set of recommendations, right? And the report identified the problem as Oregon's, and I quote, communities of colors do not have equal, fair, or equitable access to homeownership, which we already know. That's why we are here. And we also know that these disparities are the result of historical and current discriminatory housing policies and practices, which we got a good review on those today, so thank you. Now I would like to take this a little bit more and give a more conversational and give the panelists an opportunity to go more in depth on this from their perspective. And so I want to start with the Lyle. And Lyle, do you have a, okay, thank you. So as the president of NAREB, Washington chapter. Can we hear me? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. As the president of NAREB, Washington chapter, what were the biggest challenges that you see or experience in advancing this initiative, and how were they overcome?
Well, as you heard, Nicole went through a litany of things that had to be done. So once you get a program in place, now you got to get it deployed. And getting that implemented into the community, one of the things that she mentioned, what's different, if you don't have the whole network, now you have to have real estate professionals, lenders, nonprofit associations, and where those funds have to get deployed. It was storming, norming, forming, performing. This has never been done before. And so it went through some iterations of challenges, and to get it out to the community, get them educated, and get people into the process. And really, for the first time to me, bringing the real estate professionals, which is a big part of what we do at Western Washington Realtist, into that network from the beginning was really, really critical and a big part of why it was successful.
Thank you. Thank you, Kyle. Lyle. And so looking towards opportunities to advance a similar initiative here in Oregon, Quaylen, as incoming president of NAREB, Oregon, what lessons from Washington's approach do you see most applicable to Oregon housing challenges here?
Um, I believe that we have similar challenges. I think there's a lot that Nicole left out. Um, there's a lot of things that we have to deal with culturally and just across culture lines. And I think the one that just really stands out to me is the network. There's not one person standing out, and I think there's a huge opportunity, because if I look in the room, and if this was indicative of what we have to begin this process, there's some people that are not in the room that need to be in this room to be able to collaborate to do such a thing. So most impressed with the collaborative work, that the networking, that it's not just one leader, that we're all working together. And I think the challenge here is, do we have the relationships amongst each other, crossing different backgrounds to be able to put together an effort to achieve a goal like this?
Yes, thank you, Quaylen. I am going to circle back a little bit now from your perspective and your experience, Sabrina. Banks are key leaders on both advocacy for these initiatives and central to implementation for offering mortgage products that utilize these resources. I'm sorry. Tell us about the Columbia Bank's new program aligned with this initiative. Just give us a little bit more information on this.
I'm sorry. So the question is, how do the programs that Columbia have, how do they relate to the? There's a difference. There's a difference. So the programs that Columbia has, they're not special purpose credit programs, but we do have, some pretty amazing programs that should help the demographics here. One is the Legacy Builder program, and we also have a Neighbors program. And I believe Quaylen has material out on the table for people if they're interested to pick up. Yeah.
I want to piggyback on that too, because part of the purpose of a special purpose credit program is to make it targeted. It's approved by ECOA, it's approved by Reg B. It's to target it towards specific communities who are being affected. So there are we do have a credit union, for instance, Verity Credit Union, who is providing homeownership opportunities specifically for the Black foundational folks who are in the BHI network. And so there are some lenders who are doing that targeted special purpose credit program that is going to help the BHI buyers get to where they need to get to. And that is the purpose of the SPCP, is for it to be targeted.
Well, and on that, thank you, Nicole. Besides these banks and these leaderships that we already briefly touched on, I would like to know, what partnerships they have been most effective in advancing these goals, and what there's room to grow, right? How can we, the broader housing community, developers, lender advocates, contribute to this long-time success?
That's a great question. Do well what you do well. Nonprofit do really well within community engagement and getting folks involved, because you're talking with those who are in the community who are directly connected. They come to you for services. Do that well. Lenders, you are lenders. You make products. Do that well. Policy people, you do policy. Pass the laws. Everyone stays in their lane in BHI. I am not a part of Field Order 15. I'm not a developer. I don't know anything about it. That's Lyle's lane. I stay in my lane. I'm a lender. I'm a real estate broker, and I do that well. And so what we really do is we came to be, and we have real conversation in the network. Sometimes we have to have hard talk, but everyone's there to understand what's important. And so what we really grappled with early on was kind of that crossing over who does what, that egocentric kind of work. It was really a challenge. We're well further along, like Lyle said, than where we were, but we were committed to doing the work. So now people are more focused on the outcome as opposed to what's in it for me and my organization. So that continues to be the challenge. And then what I pose to folks is do what you do in a network and ensure that you do it well and provide it because it's needed. You know, as Quaylen mentioned, there may be some people missing in the room. You can't have anyone missing because no one organization, no one industry can make these changes and get this done. And that's what we learned in our network, our impact network. That's what they're called, impact networks. It's everyone do what they do and do it well and be focused on that line of sight that you have, that you set for whatever your impact network is.
Thank you. We're going to open up for questions. I'm just going to have one more questions for all panelists here. So for all panelists and piggyback, I don't even know why I tried. Following up what Nicole said here, so for all of you, what opportunities do you, from across the state, cross-state collaboration, to build momentum similar, to build momentum for similar initiatives elsewhere? And you know, what lessons from Washington's approach, and you already brought some up, but if there's anything else that you'd like to add, please, could be adapted to other states or communities seeking to close the racial homeownership gaps. And are there similar initiatives in other states? So I know it's a loaded question, so I'm going to give it to you, and then you can just keep passing down the microphone, please.
Very quickly, I've spoken across the country on this program, and what I learned initially, I was super excited, like, yes, let's do this in every state, and I had to realize and be very realistic. We had a perfect storm in Washington. Our governor, our legislature, our community, our cities, our counties were on board, first of all, with saying black. That's a big thing. Even saying that is a heavy lift for some people. So we had a perfect storm in Washington of people who were willing to go out on a limb and do that, even prior to where we find ourselves, and still continuing to do that. So I had to be realistic about my approach as I went across countries, that everyone's state and everyone's region doesn't have the opportunity to do what we did. But you can do pieces of that. So identify what you can do. Maybe you can do the full impact network. I think of all the states, probably our West Coast states are the closest to be able to mimic what we did in Washington, but I don't know that for sure, and I really found that out traveling. Find out what works in our impact network. We are happy. We're actually putting BHI in a box. That's part of one of the things that we are trying to create in the network so that we can share it in pieces, because I realized that it can't come as a whole to a vast majority of the country, but pieces can. So just identify where you think in your network, get your key collaborators together and see how you can, do that. And we're here to support whatever it is that you want to do and bring forward. And no, there are no other impact networks like BHI across the country.
So Nicole mentioned something, we collaboration. So one of the great things is that we have Nicole's the Region 14 of the RVP for NARAB, which is the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, the premier black real estate group in the country. And we have the cross collaboration between Quaylen and Mabi and I and our administrative team. And it takes a village. We each have our different strengths and weaknesses. We are a family. And as Nicole mentioned, we have to have a lot of interesting and hard conversations as we do the work, because we're both working as professionals and we're working in, the nonprofit volunteer space. And sometimes, we'll tell you that Marty, the convener, realized, Marty, this is not our job. This is our side thing of our side thing. For most of us have 2 or 3 things that we do. So you have to have a community. And you also have to consider, and Nicole didn't mention this, but the legal aspects, once it was in place, we knew that there was going to be a fight. So you got to be ready for the fights, in terms of coping, sustainability. It's not just get the program into play. You now have to think about how is this going to last 5, 10, 15, 20 years and be impactful, and really mitigate and consider every possibility, because there's a war in the country going on. We know it is. It's unfortunate. It's disparate, but it's true. So you have to really take everything into consideration. You have to have all hands at the table, as Nicole mentioned. So if you have lawyers or policy experts, this can't be done or with just those folks, but you also have to have boots on ground. Who's going to go work in the community? If anybody has done any type of lending or real estate with people that have challenges, it is not for the faint of heart. You have to be there sometimes 2 or 3 or 4 years to help someone get through credit, to get through getting themselves repositioned, to just work on stuff, get debt paid down. That's one aspect, but meanwhile, back at the ranch, all that other stuff has to be happening. So this convening, I mean, Nicole had to explain convening to me like 20 times. What is a convener? And so just, you got to bring all the heads to the table, as Nicole mentioned, and think about everything, because it will come up.
For me, I continue to, can you watch that cup right there? Oregon Realtors, NARAB, National Association of Real Estate Brokers, founded in 1947. The principle of the group was Black people being left out to even participate in selling real estate. The first ever fair housing organization, spearheaded the civil rights. We have representation here. We have so many groups that are here that are doing work. My concern is I look at someone like Nicole, who I hold up in high esteem. You saw the folks, the core group that, that's in existence. We have the preference policy here in Portland. There's work being done. My concern is, do we have the spirit? Do we have the people here present right now to be able to spearhead that carry the spirit and carry this understanding that it's Black home ownership, and understanding the legacy that's happened to us? And do we need more education? Where do we start? The landscape is changing, right? The conversations that we're here talking about, this pressure, this authoritarian pressure. Do we have the people who are committed to the work, to what's right? She took us all the way back to 1968 to verify. Parents, family members are still alive to tell those stories, right? And so do we have the personnel and people here to be able to come together? Our numbers look different than Seattle. Our Black numbers are not the same. So we have even that much more need to help one another to be able to establish this. So NARAB, the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, is just one organization. And it's going to take, as we've been seeing today, it's going to take a collaborative effort for every single person who is believing in part and see this as an urgent need to come together. And my question is Oregon, are your relationships across racial boundaries, how are they? How are your relationships in legislature to talk about ethnic, being specific about ethnic groups that have been harmed? Do we have those relationships, and are we willing to advocate to be able to bring these things together? And so that's my last word.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to open up the floor now for people questions. Does anybody have any questions? We're having a little bit of technical difficulties, so I'm going to need you to come up because I don't think I can go up that far. But any questions, comments? Would you? Well, let's see.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for your time today and spending your knowledge and experience with us. Couple things to hit super fast. One, I sincerely hope that you share those slides because there was so much good information on there. I would love to track some of that a little more closely. I'm also curious if you got a link or someplace where I can find the study that was used to back the legislation. That would be really helpful to get a sense of our ability to duplicate something like that. I work in the policy, housing policy field. That's the lens I'm bringing up to my questions. And I'm curious about the special purpose credit program. We've been a little slower, I think, in Portland, or at least amongst my housing policy colleagues, to get something around that moving. I'm curious from your experience if you found that a credit union was perhaps more receptive to a special purpose program, or just sort of what that specific part of the journey looked like.
So the blackhomeInitiative.org is the website where you'll get all the information, a lot of what we found in these slides, and we'll share the slides. If you go to heretohome.org/covenant, that's where the study is. It's a 300+ page study, very comprehensive, and you'll see the study there. WishFIC holds that. And so, I'm sorry, what was the third one? Oh, credit unions, and yes. So we saw a shift after the election. We have financial institutions that were on board and very clear about what they were going to do, and then boom, that changed. Some of them, maybe one of the banks, but you're correct, credit unions are more mission driven. So credit unions have been the ones that have not really walked it back, in Washington at least. Most of the other lenders have walked some portion of it back or have just pulled out altogether. We do have one or two that stayed, and so we appreciate that. And that was part of why we had our summit in February, for folks to say, are you in or are you out? I mean, we literally asked that question. We had our statement of resolve where we shared that we're not moving, we will not be moved, but are you in and are you out? And so we can know who's moving forward and who's not. So that's what we did from that perspective. And I will share that Lyle is right. We got sued. So the commission's been sued. We currently have something in the 5th District federal court where we got sued by a plaintiff. The judge threw it out because there was no real plaintiff, but he gave them 2 weeks. They came back. I think it's meritless because that study is bulletproof. But we were prepared. Our attorneys at the commission, when we talked about that and we worked through the study, we talked about getting sued because we knew it was going to happen. So yes, those are the things that we discussed as well and are working through. And we currently have a lawsuit against the Covenant as we speak.
Along the lines of what Quaylen mentioned, and I was at the gala last night, and one of the things I heard repeatedly was equity for all people across all folks, right? So I want you guys, when you leave here, to go look up the preamble to the Constitution, because you really got to center set yourself to why this work is so important for everybody, as Nicole mentioned, and then you can begin to target focus. It's we the people, all the people. And there's a concept in real estate contract law that says bilateral, where you have a unilateral relationship that's happened over the 400-year history to folks. And so part of centering yourself, because if you get shaken, you can't, as Quaylen said, you got to be prepared for the long fight. And if this fight is not your fight, it can be difficult to stay the course. And I always say it like this, my daughter's a nurse, and it's like, okay, she went and got all the credentials, and a lot of you have daughters and nieces and granddaughters, and should my daughter go to work, go get all that education, and get paid less money? Is that equitable? That's a question. Does that make sense? Is that fair? This Constitution is not fair, it's not equitable, so you got to get yourself centered on the work, because it might be that it's not your fight, and we get that. But if you're in this housing thing, it's your fight, and you're going to have a fight bigger than the other fight, because it's a storm, and we got to weather the storm. But you got to get yourself mentally centered. This work is not for the faint of heart. You got to want to do what's right.
Thank you. So this is a very particular question. In Oregon, we've had legislation passed to specify that racially restrictive covenants can't be in effect moving forward. And as a result of that, I've talked to legislators who are like, but we fixed it. But we fixed it. I'm like, but. And I'm like, here's the study from Washington. They're like, no, we fixed the thing. So what I'm finding tricky, right, is we tried just to get the study because I want to help you understand you didn't fix the thing yet, But there's this, like, we want to feel good about ourselves. And, like, that was an important step, right? But we did not fix the thing. And they're like, oh, we don't like studies. Arrgh! So any advice or how do we jump that particular hurdle would be great.
Amen to that.
That is one of the lessons I learned about our environment in Washington. We were blessed. I will truly admit that. We had people who happened to be on the same place at the same time to do the same thing. Could we have done this 5 years ago? I don't know. But my advice is sharing what I know people see are dotted lines. And a lot of things that we did to get people on the path is we passed the same thing. The covenants are no longer enforceable, but they're still there. You can still see them. But we had real people come to the legislature and talk about how it affected them. I have a real story how I was affected by this. My family was affected by this. We were pushed out of our community. Here's what we lost. And so having them to really see the aspects of how this affected people, because what I have learned in this work is people see things theoretically, but they don't see it in real time because they don't align themselves with people who are really affected by it. So let's talk about really the company we keep. Do you really have relationships with people across different racial, ethnic, diverse communities to understand people's actual real experience? And that's what I found, that folks think the experience is not real. It's in the past. And so what we found out, and even got feedback from the legislature, is having all of us come and actually testify about how it's affected us, why we were able to get a bipartisan law passed. Republicans voted for this in Washington. And we have a very red eastern part of the country. State, excuse me.
You have questions? Thank you, Nicole. And yes, we need to get them to see things in a more micro, where we're talking about people are not housing. The problem is housing, but it's affecting people. We need to make it human.
My name's Brian Hoop with Housing Oregon. This isn't so much a question as an invite to the audience. So we've been funded by National Community Reinvestment Coalition to have a fellow who's going to do, I think, exactly what Quaylen is saying we need to do. I have a work plan that's really about reaching out and starting to identify who are the organizations and community leaders that are interested in joining and pursuing this kind of a path in Oregon. So we'll see where that goes. So they're going to start this Friday or next week. They're a Willamette University student. They'd be here, except they're at a YIMBY conference on the East Coast right now. So I will be here afterwards. If you're interested in being a planning committee or interested in pursuing this, because I want to organize some kind of a steering committee, I'd be happy to take your name and email. So anyone who's interested in Oregon, come talk to me.
Thank you, Brian.
Hi, my name is Destiny Wilder. I represent Rooted Homes of Central Oregon. How do we make change now? Because it's so great to have policies and groups that are coming together to make change, but how can I start giving preference to folks that are of color, especially with Oregon's history of excluding people of color? And as you go more southern and more eastern, the state gets very, very red. And how do you make that a human conversation and even find people of color that feel safe in those areas?
That's a wonderful question.
Well, part of for us is accepting who wasn't going to be in the room and being okay with that. Our Eastern Washington is like that. It gets redder. It gets much more divisive. It gets much more racist. There's parts of my own state I will not travel to, period. Still, to this day. I still acknowledging that those spaces are not there. We have a buyer outreach work group that does exactly that, trying to find the people, because like Oregon, we have more numbers, but not a whole lot. And so we're no longer centrally located like we used to be. In Seattle, we were the Central District. In Tacoma, it was the Hilltop. And you knew where the black folks were. That is not the case anymore. For instance, we have the Faith Initiative, where we still know that 87% of the black community still goes to church on Sunday. So I head up the faith work group, where we are actually in the churches finding the community. So that's what we did in Washington. Find out where the community still is, where they congregate. We work with the sororities and fraternities. We know that a lot of the black community are still part of civic organizations, fraternities, sororities, churches. So we're hyper-focused on those organizations because we know that's where community is. So whatever community you're trying to find, go to where they are, particularly given there's no one's coming together like that because the communities don't exist, and go there and start today. If you're starting today, obviously, that means your individual organization, right? Because the Impact Network takes time to get up and running. Again, find out what it is you can do, where you can change that. Our Housing Washington we're having in 2 weeks, and I'm going to be moderating a panel talking about how to not let this short-term things happen and change people's direction. We've been here before. We've been here before. I share this with folks all the time. As a black woman in America, none of this stuff happening is phasing me, surprising me, has me shook, because I'm a black woman in America. I have been experiencing this type of stuff my entire 49 years. And I have grandmother and great aunt. My great aunt's 99 years old. She has stories. So we know these things are short-lived. We're playing the long game. So really figure out what your long game is, and don't let these to what Lyle said, don't let it pump fear in your heart, because what they can't do is come after everybody. And so when you stay grounded and stay together, as we have in our network, surprisingly, a lot of folks did not walk. And it was heartening for me, because I expected the opposite. But some people are really in it for the long haul, and they're willing to take the hit and are willing to deal with things in this short run, because this is a short run. And then things will not be the same, but we can continue to do this work if we're doing it collectively. And then if you started in Oregon and we're connected, Washington and Oregon, now we have a larger network that cannot be penetrated, right? So if you want to start today, whatever it is your organization does, and do that impact, but get the network together, because you can't do anything by yourself.
So one last thing. So part of what's evolved for Western Washington Realtors, we're in the process of forming the Washington Realtors Foundation to become the convener, taking over that role to be the kind of synergizer of all these things. And like I said, we'll be in direct partnership with our Oregon Realtors family. And so reach out to them, reach out to us. The work continues, as Nicole said, it's an ever-moving target, and we do it together. And because you get tired and you got to pass the baton. You know, you're going to get tired. So you're going to need to pass the baton. So you got to build up that network, and we're kind of forming areas now like Spokane, which has been kind of neglected. As Nicole said, as you go east, it gets interesting. I mean, I saw it during political times. I was driving to Idaho. I mean, you just see the signs, the energy. But don't be, we got to keep the fight going. Again, what's right is right. We got to stay the course. It's not easy. And you'll start to look. There are people, you asked the question about feeling safe. There are people in those communities that don't feel safe, and they're going to reach out to, it's going to be important to look for them and to reach out for them and to give them a place to check in with, so they don't feel isolated and alone. Nobody does well that way. So it's, it'll happen when you put your base in place, and then they're out, folks are out there, and you got to create a pathway for them to connect. And it's like they're going to dab their toe in the water a little bit, and it's going to take a minute, but it's all about making sure the foundation is strong, which I saw last night. So I'm encouraged coming to Oregon and what I saw last night, and the energy and the conversation. So thanks for having us. And from Washington, it was really, it's joyous to see diverse faces putting this work into this work.
So our time is up. I just want to say, to answer that question, she wants it now. I want it right now. This is something that I just honestly feel like we did make sure that we work on our people connection. It's not going to happen until we start building those relationships, because people, I just know, speaking for African American community, we've been hurt. Like, to say that we're going to, even to go and meet with you, Brian, and have this effort, are we going to be disappointed? And so we really have to work on building those relationships and strengthen those relationships. Are you a place who is inviting that in? Are you educated about this, or are you just looking at the end goal? We need to get educated. Nicole gave us a lot of information to process, to understand, to become more acquainted with, so that we can do this work. Some of us are maybe only half full right now and in the room. That's okay, right? But do the work so you can get full, get the information, so that way we can be resilient. Nothing can stop the effort once we all come together in that network that she showed us in that image, right? So Oregon, I'm so proud to be here that we brought Washington here, and that we have them so close, right? Because we are the Pacific Northwest together, and so it means we can achieve the same goal and be blessed the same, Nicole. So thank everybody for being here, and make sure you get the information you need. Come and talk to the folks here, and I think that's it. Yeah.
Thank you. The presentation will be, Brian, how do we share the links to the presentation afterwards? It's going to be sent to us, so if you are interested, please leave your number or name, and we'll send it to you. Thank you so much.